All right, sassy gamers, this is Phoenix Nova here, and we are at PAX East 2024. I'm here with Vincent of Dread XP that is going to be publishing the game Heartworm. Now, Vincent, I understand you are the developer for Heartworm, correct?
I am. Yep.
Let's start with, tell us a little bit about Heartworm.
Yeah. So it's a survival horror game inspired, obviously, by the retro classics. But I'm trying to modernize it a little bit and put my own spin on it.
Now you say retro classics for the horror game. Where are you getting your inspiration from? Because the audience wants to get a little bit better idea of what type of game this is.
It's Resident Evil and Silent Hill inspired, but it probably is leaning more towards Silent Hill. Like, it's not really, I'm not trying to be too campy or cheesy with it. You know, there's no zombies. It definitely has like a serious overtone, I guess. You know, maybe not too serious, but more in the direction of Silent Hill, where, you know, exploring themes like death and memory and things like that, and in a lot of other ways too. Like there's the whole world is 3D. That's very Silent Hill, I guess, compared to Resident Evil. It's somewhere in the middle, meters leaning towards Silent Hill. Yeah.
Sure. Now you say putting your own modern twist on it.
Yeah.
And when I sat down to play this, first thing I notice is tank controls. And for some of the listeners that may not have played some of those early things, tank controls is you push up to move forward and you move either joystick or D-pad to the right or left to turn right or left. Even if you're coming at you, your character will turn to their right. So that's tank controls. And fixed cameras that automatically flip. So that's a very specific design aesthetic you've chosen to go with.
Yeah.
What kind of led you down that path that you wanted to keep that even with the modern touches you're putting in?
I really enjoy just the idea of fixed cameras from like a storytelling perspective. I feel like you can kind of shape the player's perspective with a little more guidance than like just a first-person game or something. Just first person, I mean, they can, look anywhere. Half-Life does it really well. They like, kind of force the narrative that way, but I wanted to make it more like cinematic, I guess. And having to like, I have a photography background too, so I wanted to like kind of use that. I like to frame things, and yeah, just like having a more meticulous approach to laying out the game.
Well, you say more cinematic because one of the things that I've heard, there's typically two things that I've seen in horror that sometimes translates between movies and games, and sometimes is a difference. And different people are scared of different things. One of them is taking agency away from the player.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's some of the things that movies do very good, because it's like, oh my God, you fool, don't go in there.
Right. Yeah.
And this, you kind of get a little bit of both, right? Because you got the camera, which takes a little bit of agency away from the player, makes it a little less feeling like you're that person.
Yep.
But still you're in control of that person, and you have to force them to go in there.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, there's so many situations like, not showing what's around the corner, but you still, the player, they have to go that way. Like that's, I think there are a lot of situations where that exact kind of combination pops up in the game.
I loved one of them was one of the camera pops from one angle to another allowed you to do, again, a little bit more cinematic, where all of a sudden the camera's now showing a little bit more of the room that I'm going into that has a door to the outside and a shadowy figure walks across the door.
Yep.
And that's my next destination too.
Right. You have to go there. You may not want to, but you have to.
Yeah. And I think it kind of harkens also back to like Half-Life, the original Half-Life, and how they did in-game cutscenes.
Yeah.
By forcing the camera to look in a particular direction.
Yep. Yeah.
You can make sure that the players are seeing what you want them to see.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about how that can heighten the suspense, the drama, the dread that you are trying to instill in the players.
Yeah. So, I mean, the example you gave is I think a really strong one from the beginning of the game. But I'm trying to do that more, where I'm just like kind of forcing the player into basically seeing what's to come, but also like seeing what to be afraid of, like I've been very much inspired by Half-Life in that way, like kind of like having these like natural moments, like, you know, air quotes natural happen in the game, but force the player to experience them, I guess.
Well, I would imagine it makes it easier for storytelling as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And there is like, you know, the story is, it is pretty ambiguous in Heartworm, but it is like there is a story. So it's like I am trying to, you know, while I am giving the player freedom to like explore this place and not necessarily guide them, I do want to, you know, I have to set up all of these moments to kind of, yeah, explain what's happening now or like what's happening next and where, you know, where things are going.
So obviously you've chosen a path for designing a game that's in the horror genre. What is it about that genre that drew you to that to make games like this? That literally you're trying to scare the out of people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been drawn to horror in my life from even when I was like super young. I played Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation when I was like 8 or something. Like, I definitely shouldn't have played it. That was terrible for me, but I never wanted to stop playing things like that. So
it's convenient that since you didn't want to stop playing things like that, now you get to make games like that.
Yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. So yeah, it just kind of made sense.
So we danced around the modern touches. What are some of the modern touches that you're bringing into this?
So there are like camera relative controls. So you don't have to use tank if you're not comfortable with that.
I would like to say with the tank controls, one of the common things I've seen before is the sudden camera shifts can like make you all of a sudden like lose the direction you're going and stuff like that. And I didn't feel that as much in this one. Is that also part of some of your modern touches?
Yeah, so I am being like really deliberate with how I'm laying things out camera-wise, just because that is super common. In a lot of the older games, it was pretty arbitrary, and there were a lot of like uncomfortable changes, and then you're like, I don't know where I am, or you're in combat, and then you get hit, and you're like, well, you know, if this was real life, I would have just kept walking the right way. I wouldn't have like spun around on myself, you know? So I'm trying to do stuff like that just to kind of smooth it out. Yeah.
And you said you can have more traditional controls, more modern controls, which is more of push the joystick in the direction that you want to go and your character goes that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does that work with the camera flipping? How do you prevent that from being a problem?
So the trick that I use is what they used in the Resident Evil remake for the GameCube, or inspired by, you know, I tried to improve on it a little bit, but basically, it maintains the direction you're holding on your controller when you switch angles until you make a certain amount of adjustment.
Gotcha. It's almost like netcode for fighting games.
Yeah, basically, it's compensating for what you're doing. Yeah, that's the.
So puzzles. Yep. Puzzles are an integral part of this type of horror game.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a big part. You know, combat is not really these games' strong suit, I would say, for the most part. Like, until you get to Resident Evil 4, it really wasn't. You're not like, oh man, I love the combat in Resident Evil 2 or whatever. So puzzles are really important, and yeah, it's something I'm focusing on a lot in the game. There's not a ton in the demo, but there are a lot more in the full game, and I'm really trying to focus on them as a central piece to the whole thing.
So what about a little bit about the variety of the puzzles? Like, what are the different types?
Yeah, so I've been playing the old like Cyan games recently, like Myst and Riven, and I'm really inspired by those and the way they integrate the story into the puzzles. And it's not just like logic puzzles. Like I like logic puzzles; they're cool, and I have some in the game. But I want the puzzles to feel like they're part of the world, and that's like, and also like not require outside knowledge or explanation. Like I want it to feel like you're naturally understanding how to like solve these puzzles as you explore the environment. Like as a reward for exploring, you find the solution, and that's like. You know, it's pretty hard to do. I don't know if I'm going to be 100% successful, but it's what I'm trying. So that's, yeah.
Excellent. Now, you did say demo. We're obviously at PAX East 2024, and we have a demo on the floor. Is that also available outside of PAX?
Yeah, it's on Steam. It's about a year old, so it is dated at this point. The game is a lot different now, but I think it's still a good representation if you take it with a grain of salt. And yeah, it's on Steam. It'll be on there till the game releases probably. So.
Speaking of release, do we have any estimate on the release date?
It's going to be 2025, early probably, and that's about all I know for now. Yeah.
Okay. So if people want to find out more about Heartworm, where can they go?
Follow DreadXP online. I'm online on Twitter mostly.
So how do we find you on Twitter, Vincent?
It's my last name. It's Adonolfi. Good luck figuring that one out, but I'm out there. You search Heartworm, you
probably linked at DreadXP.
Yes, that's a great way to connect it all. Yep.
Okay, what platforms is this going to release on?
So far, PC and TBD.
Are you testing on the Steam Deck?
I play it on my Steam Deck all the time. Yep, it is. Yep. So yeah. Works flawlessly right now.
Okay, Vincent, anything else that you want to tell the audience about Heartworm?
I don't know. Yeah, if you like these kind of games, I think you'll like it, so check it out. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Vincent. I really appreciate it a lot. And you have a great rest of your PAX.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Yeah.